Principals or students, what's the craziest office moment you had? Story 1. I had a kid in one of my classes senior year that was pretty oblivious to everything around him. Last few weeks of school, he sits down in class like any other day, except today he's carrying an empty coffee mug. He puts the mug down on his desk and pulls out a can of beer, cracks the beer and pours it into the mug while the teacher stares on in disbelief. The teacher says, "You've got to be kidding me. You know you can't do that right." Student responds, "Oh, I thought you'd be cool with it." You should go to the principal's office now for a little conversation. The kid is now a legend, albeit an unemployed legend. Story 2. I was a student. In this one particular class, we always did bell ringers. A question on the board we answered at the start of class, and we would turn them in at the end of the week for extra credit. I always messed with the kid who sat next to me, and we would always try to draw inappropriate things on each other's paper. Eventually, a total war broke and I went all in. Big, small, long, you name it, and it was on this kid's paper. Instead of erasing it, though, he turned it in, and shortly after I was in the principal's office. Once I sat down, the principal pulls this bell ringer paper out and asks me if I was the one responsible for the masterpiece. He then compliments me on my Siamese drawing and starts laughing. He tells me that it reminded him of his high school days. All he did was warn me not to overdo it again, to where I ended up in the office again. Maybe not the craziest, but the funniest in my opinion. Story 3. So one day a kid skipped class and went off campus for a cigarette. He didn't sign out. He was immediately expelled and banned from campus. He was halfway through his senior year, so they let him graduate of the program. Anyway, a few months later, a kid went into a bathroom and smoked a bowl. The entire building reeked because of the venting system. Want to know his punishment? Nothing, literally. He didn't lose any privileges. His parents came in and talked to the headmaster with the kid, and that's all that happened. My English teacher even made a joke about it, saying, "So can I just do D's during class?" Story 4. All through school there has been this one guy who we all call Smeagol, like Gollum. And this kid has been obsessed with me, constantly trying to get my attention and everything. So in 10th grade, we are on a band/choir trip in Chicago, approximately 10 hours from home, and we're on the viewing platforms at the Sears Tower. I'm deathly afraid of heights. It took my friends a good half hour to get me to go on it. I slowly edge on, and what does this clown do? Pushes me down onto the clear-floored platform. Well, it's more like a box. So I fall onto the floor of it and look straight down to the ground, a 100 or so stories below. I immediately get up and punch him square in the nose. I had never hit anyone before in my life. He starts bawling. My teacher stipes the principal, and he says, "Did you break his nose?" "No, I don't think so." Well, he had it coming. As long as he won't be permanently damaged, I'll let it go. Story 5. Another student here. In like 10th grade, I was walking down the hall in my school, coming back from lunch, and I was talking to a girl I was interested in. Somehow, our conversation shifted to an apple I had brought from the cafeteria. Being a clown, I ended up lobbing it into a crowd of people. I ended up hitting a senior with an anger issue. What proceeded was a hulking 18-year-old who didn't seem to like getting pegged by apples charging at me, looking to beat the hell out of me. A teacher intervened, and he and I were both escorted to the principal's office and had to do 40 hours of community service together. Story 6. This is a story from my friend's younger brother. Let's call him Ralph. Ralph went to a small private school that went from grades kindergarten to 9. When he was in 9th grade, they got a new principal at his school. This new principal, we'll call him Mr. Paul, was very strict and looked like Voldemort with bulldog jowls. Needless to say, he was not particularly well respected or liked. So anyway, Ralph and his friend from India, we'll call him Sam, were looking to cause some trouble one day. So they went into the bathroom and started throwing toilet paper into stalls and making a mess. Suddenly they hear a noise from one of the stalls, and Sam shouts in a thick Indian accent, "Oh, there's a kid in there." They ran for it, but they were caught a few days later. Mr. Paul brings them down to his office, and in his high-pitched, reedy voice says, "Because of you two, a young child has been traumatized in the washrooms." And so the entire junior high population of the school, grades 7 to 9, were forbidden from using the first-floor washroom. Story 7. I was the TA for my history teacher junior year in HS. My history teacher sent me to deliver a note to the choir teacher. As I arrived in the choir class, I didn't see the teacher anywhere. However, all of his students were in their seats. It was stadium-type seats, and I was on the stage looking for the teacher. One of my good friends was in the class, and she jokingly said, "You, it's my name," to which I replied, "Eat my poop," as I showed my hips. I was expecting a good laugh, but instead was met with pure silence and no faces. The next sound I hear is the choir teacher who just entered the class behind me asking, "What did you just say?" He sent me right to the principal's office. I tried to explain it away as a rooster joke between friends, but that didn't fly at all. He made me return to the class and apologize and then gave detention. Story 8. Principal here. Larry was brought to my office by an irate teacher because he not only wouldn't stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance, he was making fart noises during the pledge. This was a 12-year-old 7th grader. As we talked, I told him he didn't have to stand up, but he did need to be quiet. He informed me that he did not believe in indoctrination and would resist. He and his family were a pain, so even though I didn't want to, I told him I need to call his mom. He then informed me that it wasn't his mother I'd be calling because he was the illegitimate child of Eva Braun and Adolf Hitler. I called Mom anyway and began screaming, "That's not my mom." She demanded to talk to him, so I handed him the phone. He informed his mother he was not her child. He was the illegitimate child of Eva Braun and Adolf Hitler. I could hear her begin to scream at him over the phone as he screamed at her, "You're not my mom." He finally gave me the phone back, and after the mom yelled at me for a while, she agreed to come and get him. She was not happy when she picked him up, and was even less so as she pulled him out of the building as he screamed, "Sieg Heil! Sieg Heil!" He was later sent to juvenile detention, where I read in the paper he attempted to incite other residents to riot over food choices. You can't make this up. Story 9. I got called into the principal's office one day for recording a fight between two students. These kids were trying to start a fight club, and honestly they handled it very well. So I recorded the arranged fight, and as soon as it ended, and I hit the button on my phone to stop recording, a teacher walked by and grabbed my phone. Now this was the iPhone 3G, and it had just come out, and they hadn't been able to record video natively. But I was jailbroken and was using Cycorder at the time. So the VP calls me into her office a few hours later and proceeded to only ask me about my phone. She had been searching for hours for Cycorder on the App Store and was asking how I changed the look and preferences of my phone and how I locked certain apps, to which I asked why she was trying to get in my settings and messages. It ended up with us hanging out for the final period of the day, and when the final bell rang, she just said, "Oh, don't record any more fights, okay?" And she called me out of class a week later to walk her through the jailbreak process. Story 10. For my 13th birthday, when I was in 8th grade, I had a few of my friends over for a sleepover. We were really into prank phone calling people then, so we would go through the phone book and call up random stores and say stupid things. So we're sitting around prank calling people, and one of my friends at the time mentions that she has our gym teacher's phone number, since she was the tennis coach and my friend was on the team. Of course, we thought this would be the ultimate prank call, and my other friend dialed the number. I don't remember what was said. I just remember I didn't say anything and my two friends spoke. That Monday, we were called into the principal's office because my friend had forgotten to block her number and our teacher knew who it was. My two friends got a week of lunch detention and 2 days of in-school detention. I wasn't punished at all, but felt bad since I encouraged the idea. Like an idiot, I went back to the principal and told him that I really felt bad and I should be punished too, not just my friends. He started screaming at me and asked why I was questioning his judgment, and proceeded to ask me if I wanted to be punished even more now. I said no, and noped out of his office. Story 11. My mother worked as middle school assistant principal for a few years, and as such she got to handle all the disciplinary problems. My family got to hear some great stories, but one in particular stands out. So the cafeteria had ice cream for dessert that day. The kitchen staff left the scoops to be cleaned in a big barrel of wastewater until it's time for cleaning dishes. This water is disgusting as hell, dirty, clouded, filled with bits of various ice creams. A group of boys who had sneaked out found it behind the kitchens, and not knowing what it was, dared each other to drink it. Obviously, this resulted in bad stomach aches. Once the nurse determined that it was nothing serious, they were called into the office for discipline. Leaving the cafeteria was expressly forbidden during lunch, except for bathroom trips, and they had technically stolen from the kitchens, though she decided that drinking that stuff was its own punishment. Parents were called, and most of the kids wound up going home for the day. My mother laughed about one parent, though, who, when called, replied that if her son was stupid enough to do something like that, he could suffer through his classes regardless. Story 12. About a week before my final exams for high school, we all had to meet with our careers advisor, just in case he could help us with getting a job when we finished school. As I already knew what I wanted and had jobs lined up, I didn't really want to go, but we get detention if we didn't. But I thought, hey, 20 minutes out of class won't be so bad. After telling him what I wanted to do and how I was going to achieve it, he looked at me and goes, "Why don't you just drop out of school, then if you've already got everything ready?" A week before my final high school exams. I looked at him in disbelief until he repeated himself, at which point I told him to go to hell. What kind of a teacher tells their student to drop out of high school so close to their exams? You're a crazy idiot. He got on the phone and called the principal, telling her I'd be sent up to her office. Once I got there, she told me to sit down, and she said, "He just told me that you swore at him," unprovoked. "Now tell me your side of the story." I told her about how he told me to drop out and how I swore at him and whatnot. When I finished, she calmly picked up the phone, called him back and said, "You are a swear word idiot," and hung up. She let me chill out in her office for a bit longer, then sent me on my way. I heard that the next year he was fired for some sort of misconduct. Story 13. When I was a student in 8th grade, I had a PE class with a bunch of my friends. One day my friends decided rolling quarters to each other across the classroom while my teacher was talking would be a funny idea. I was in no way involved with this and was merely a spectator. My teacher caught on to what was going on and immediately said that if someone doesn't confess to rolling the quarters that she would send me to the office. What the hell? My teacher didn't even think I was a part of what was going on. So I had sent to the office because of course my fool buddies didn't want to man up. When I got to the dean's room, he sighed and said, "Just go back to class. There's nothing I can do about it." Story 14. At the school where my mom teaches, which will remain nameless, there have been at least 2 injuries this year which resulted in hospitalization. They were both due to student-on-teacher violence. A student slammed a door on a teacher's head, causing a concussion and necessitating a trip to the ER. The student's aunt/caregiver blamed the teacher, saying, "You must have done something to make him mad." Another student grappled with a teacher, causing injury to the teacher's knee severe enough to require surgery. Surprise, surprise, the school is a center for kids who were kicked out of other schools. It is an elementary school. My mom has taught for 30 years and acted as principal of that school on occasion, sub for the principal, and has many stories. The one that stands out to me the most is this one. The mother of a student is in the principal's office filling out emergency contact forms. Apparently, the mother had several children by different fathers and couldn't immediately remember the father of that particular child. The mother, completely serious, turns to her kid and says, "Who be yo daddy?" Story 15. This is more of a crazy story because of how ridiculous this visit to the dean's office was for me in high school. At the end of my junior year, I decided to get my lip pierced. I went to a Jesuit high school with a very strict dress code, but I figured I could get a clear plug for it when school started again. The only thing I didn't consider was the fact that I had a Saturday detention I still had to serve. I showed up there early in the morning and hoped that I could make it through the day without seeing the dean who gave me the detention. We had to do a bunch of cleaning around the school and the grounds outside until the afternoon. I made it through most of the day without incident and even saw a bunch of my teachers, including one of my favorites who complimented me on the piercing, and even ran into the other dean, who was much nicer than the other. Finally, at the end of the day, one of the other kids in detention with me came up and said, "After you finish that up, tell Dean Tracy and you can go." Crap. I had made it the whole day without seeing him, but now I had no choice. I made my way to his office and took a breath and knocked. I figured I was far enough away that he wouldn't be able to see me, but as soon as I told him I was finished, he dropped his pen and said, "What is that?" I tried to play dumb, but I knew he had seen it. He had me come into his office and proceeded to berate me about how I was a terrible person, a bad reflection of the school and student body, and even called me a mope several times for some reason. I didn't say anything until the end, when I asked him if I could go home. He told me I could, but also added that next year I would have to come into his office every day before class so he could inspect me and make sure I was in dress code. Even though I knew I was pushing it by getting the piercing, I thought the whole thing was a crazy overreaction, especially considering that it was technically summer. Story 16. I'm interning as a principal right now, since I'm finishing up my licensure program. I teach English most of the day and spend about 2 hours in the office doing work and basic discipline. One day, my principal gave me the most unique disciplinary assignment I've had to date. This kid, who we'll call Zed, walked into his chemistry class in a tuxedo, pulled out a dinner plate, a candlestick and candle, cutlery, and one of those 5-pound gummy worms. He proceeded to light the candle in the candlestick, throw the gummy worm down on the plate, and eat as if there was nothing unusual about it. I was dumbfounded and just gave the kid a warning for having food in the classroom. To be honest, that was the only rule he really broke, candles in the chemistry room maybe, and he's a great kid otherwise. I expect big things out of him once he graduates. Story 17. Before building a room for the study hall, they had a study hall in the MPR multipurpose room, and I had a study hall just before lunch. My friends and I were clowning around, and I asked a passing classmate if she happened to have a tampon, and she did and gave it to me. When the bell rang and the first lunch group made its way to the lines, we dunked it in fruit punch, then launched it by the string into a mass of people. I ended up smacking someone with it, and for like 30 seconds, there was a panic of, "Oh my God, is that real?" The dean of students saw me and made me sit in the in-school suspension room, and I had to eat my lunch there, and then I got a Wednesday school, which was just extra long detention. Story 18. Every lunch period, a bunch of guys would play hacky sack in the entryway of the school. There was this really creepy guy who pretty much acted inappropriately towards a bunch of the girls, and was just generally unliked by a lot of people. Anyway, one day he decides to join and the principal is walking past, so he yells heads up and kicks it over to him. The principal catches it, then biffs it, purposely, at creepy guy's groin, causing him to fall over in pain. Principal just keeps walking like nothing happened. Story 19. I had a friend in high school who was that super little skinny Asian dude, with the "mess with me and I'll finish your entire bloodline" eyes, but he never did anything. One day he just walked away from our group over to some guys who I had assumed pissed him off. He would sit out and pisses all over one of them. The two boys were so stunned they didn't even try to stop him. The kid just kind of put his hand up and sputtered like he was absolutely shocked. He zipped up and walked toward the principal's office. Story 20. In 7th grade, two girls got into a fight outside my music class, so a big circle formed around to watch it. I was a little late, so in order to get a view, I was behind a circle of people jumping up and down trying to see the fight. Well, next thing I know, the principal grabs me and says, "Go to my office now," as he and teachers break up the fight. I had to call my parents and ended up with a 2-day in-school suspension for supporting a fight, or something like that. That's a wrap for this video. Make sure to leave your relatable story down in the comments. I would love to make a video on them. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.